Out on the road, I glanced down at the pathetic little animal gasping on the seat by my side. I patted the head, and Tricky made a brave effort to wag his tail. Poor old lad, I said, you haven't a kick in you, but I think I know a cure for you. See, as he moves out of the house, okay, and comes on the road, okay, he comes out from the bungalow of where Mrs. Pumphrey was staying, and he comes on the road. Then he glances, means he looks at the puppy which he has brought, okay, and which he have kept on the side seat besides him. He was driving and he had kept on the seat besides him, okay. So he patted the head of Tricky, and so what Tricky did, he tried to wag his tail. He was trying to wag his tail as Mr. Harriet was petting him, and Mr. Harriet said, "Poor old lad, you don't have anything. You don't have those energy in you. But I know a cure for you. But I have an answer for your illness." Okay. At the surgery, he came to the hospital carrying him. The household dogs surged round me. Tricky looked down at the noisy pack with dull eyes, and when put down, lay motionless on the carpet. The other dogs, after sniffing around him for a few seconds, decided he was an uninteresting object and ignored him. So at the surgery, when they reached the hospital, he kept the dog. Immediately as he entered Mr. Harriet, the other dogs which were in the hospital, they surrounded him. Okay, they surrounded him, and Tricky was being carried by Mr. Harriet. Tricky was in his hands. So he looked down at that noisy pack when they were noisy, those dogs barking and all those things. Okay, he just looked at it with his dull eyes. Means he didn't have even the strength to open his eyes fully. Okay, and as Mr. Harriet puts him down, he laid down motionlessly. Okay, the other dogs, which were already the household dogs, they started sniffing him, and after sniffing him, they found him to be an uninteresting object because he was not giving any reactions. So he was just lying down, okay, coolly, motionless he was there. So he was not giving any reaction. So the other dogs, the household dogs, what they did, they just sniffed him and went away, ignoring him. I made a bed for him in the warm loose box next to the one where the other dogs slept. For 2 days I kept an eye on him, giving him no food but plenty of water. At the end of the second day, he started to show some interest in his surroundings, and on the third day, he began to whimper when he heard the dogs in the yard. So, Mr. Harriet, what he does, he makes a bed for him in a box near the place where the other dogs used to sleep. Okay, there only he makes a bed where the other dogs used to sleep. There he makes a bed for Tricky. Okay, and starts observing him. For 2 days he was continuously observing him. He didn't give him any food. No food for 2 days. Only lots of water. On the third day he saw that this Tricky was showing a little bit of action. Okay. Tricky was showing some interest about his surroundings. Till then, in 2 days, he was just motionless. Now, for 2 days, he didn't eat anything, just drinking a lot of water. Now, he was showing some energy, he was showing some interest in his surroundings. And on the third day, later, he started whimpering, means making small noises. After hearing the other dogs around him shouting, barking, so he started making some feeble noises. When I opened the door, Tricky trotted out and was immediately engulfed by Joe the greyhound and his friends. After rolling him over and thoroughly inspecting him, the dogs moved off down the garden. Tricky followed them, rolling slightly with his surplus flat. As Mr. Harriet opens the door of the box where he was been kept for 2 days, immediately what happened? Tricky came out of that box. And as he came out, immediately the other dogs in the household, the Joe, one of them's name is Joe, he's a greyhound, a type of a dog, okay, greyhound. So all that greyhound, Joe and all his friends, they started coming closer to Tricky. They started rolling, they rolled him down, okay, since he was fat, and they started inspecting him. Then the dogs moved towards the garden, and as the other dogs moved, Tricky also followed these dogs, rolling slightly because he was very fat, so it was very difficult for him to walk. So he was rolling with his surplus fat. Later that day, I was present at feeding time. I watched while Tristan slopped the food into the bowls. There was the usual headlong rush, followed by the sounds of high-speed eating. Every dog knew that if he fell behind the others, he was liable to have some competition for the last part of his meal. Later that day, during meal time, means the feeding time of the dogs, where his assistant or his helper, Tristan, was giving food to was flopping into the bowls of all these dogs. Each dog had his own bowl, so he was slopping food in their bowl. All these dogs, they rushed to have their food, and they started eating very fast because they know if they eat slowly, what will happen? The other dogs will finish their food and will come to eat from their bowl. So each wanted to finish, otherwise there will be competition. They will get less. So each one wanted to finish as early as possible. Everyone started eating fast. Okay? So everyone finished. When they had finished, after they finished, Tricky took a walk around the shining balls. After all had finished, Tricky now started moving around his bowls of food, shining balls of food, licking casually. He was licking inside one or the other. Next day, Mr. Harriet gives another ball, a ball specially for Tricky, an extra ball, and he saw him that Tricky was also now jostling his way next day to eat the food from the bowl. From then on, from that day onwards, his progress was rapid, means his progress was fast, progress of improvement of Tricky. He had no medical treatment of any kind, but all day he ran about with the dogs, joining in their friendly scrimmages. He discovered the joys of being bowled over, tramped on, and squashed every few minutes. He became an accepted member of the gang, an unlikely, silky little object among the shaggy crew, fighting like a tiger for his share at mealtimes and hunting rats in the old hen house at night. He had never had such a time in his life. So from then on, the progress of his health started being very fast. Okay, Mr. Harriet didn't give him any type of medical treatment. Okay, no medical treatment. But what was happening was that Tricky was now playing with his dogs, running with his dogs, fighting with his dogs. All he was just enjoying with the dogs. Now he had become a part of that gang of the other dogs. Okay, he was quite different. Means his skin, his fur was silky compared to the other shaggy dogs. Okay, but he was enjoying. He was jostling for his food, rushing for his food during meal times, and at night he was what he was doing? He was hunting rats in the hen house. Tricky had never had such a beautiful time before any time. So now he was really enjoying the life in that surgery. All the while, Miss Pumphrey hovered anxiously in the background, ringing a dozen times a day for the latest bulletins. Miss, all these days, Mrs. Pumphrey always kept on calling him, asking him about the news, how he is doing, how Trick is doing, how his health is. So she was continuously calling him. I dodged the questions about whether his cushions were being turned regularly or his correct coat worn according to the weather, but I was able to tell her that the little fellow was out of danger and convalescing rapidly. See, she was always calling him to know whether his cushions were changed, means the place cushion covers were changed, whether he was been his coat was whether you are wearing him the right coat, but he was not given any type of coat, he was not given any cushion, he was just like any other dog from the household, he was just like that dog, okay. But so he didn't answer any of her questions, only who, Mr. Harriet, he only told her that he was doing fine and he was convalescing, means he was recovering from the illness and soon he will be out of danger. The word conversing seemed to do something to Mrs. Pumphrey. When he used the word conversing, that is recovering from illness. So that something it made to Mrs. Pumphrey. She started to bring round fresh eggs, 2 dozen at a time, to build up Tricky's strength. For a happy period, my partners and I had 2 eggs each for breakfast. But when the bottles of wine began to arrive, the real possibilities of the situation began to dawn on the household. Okay, so since Mr. Harriet had told that he's convalescing, is coming out of recovering from illness, what Pumphrey does is that she brings 2 dozen at a time. She is bringing 2 dozen eggs, boiled eggs, to give to Tricky, and so when the real time came, means really they were the household, means the people in the surgery who were staying along with Mr. Harriet were really, means, really feeling very strange that she was bringing 2 eggs, and really something dawned on him, then dawned on them that the situation, that this is going to be a really alarming situation when Mrs. Pumphrey brought a bottle of wine. Okay. Why she had brought? To enrich whose? Tricky's blood. She thought that he's convulsing, so he needs a bottle of wine, so that will help his blood grow. Okay. Lunch. So what had happened was that since Pumphrey was bringing 2 dozen eggs every day, the people in the surgery, they started having, there were 12 people, they started having 2 eggs for breakfast every day. Means the eggs which Pumphrey was bringing for Tricky, they were not giving it to Tricky. Instead, the household people were eating them. Okay. Now she bought a bottle of wine. So now lunch became a ceremonial occasion with 2 glasses of wine before and several during the meal. Means all the people in the household, the wine was given for Tricky, but they were not giving him wine. Instead, the wine was drunk by Mr. Harriet and his gang. And gang means his aides, his assistants. They started in the afternoon during lunch. Before lunch, they had 2 glasses of wine, then many more glasses during meal. So it was a ceremonious lunch every day for them with wine. Okay. We could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put a final edge on Tricky's constitution. For a few nights, the swine spirit was rolled round, inhaled and hurriedly. And last day, Mrs. Pumphrey brings a bottle of brandy, okay, for Tricky. Now these people really don't understand what's happening. Okay, so what did they do there? They took that bottle of brandy, and now they really enjoyed for a few nights till the bottle was over. They used to drink brandy before their dinner time. So really these people were really happy. They were days of deep content, starting well with extra egg in the morning, improved and sustained by the midday wine, and finishing luxuriously round the fire with brandy. Mr. Harriet says those days were really content, very satisfied days for us, for him and his staff. Because now early morning they used to start their day with 2 eggs. Then during lunchtime they used to have they used to drink wine. Okay, and at night they used to have a glass of brandy. So really they were enjoying those days when Tricky was staying over there. It was a temptation to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest, but I knew Mrs. Pumphrey was suffering, and after a fortnight felt compelled to phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was awaiting collection. So, in fact, Mr. Harriet, he was thinking that it was a temptation for him if they had kept the Tricky with them, then they could have enjoyed like this all the day, every day. Don't know how many days they could. But Mr. Harriet says that he was knowing that Mrs. Pumphrey must be suffering, that because Tricky was not with her. So now he thinks that now he should call Tricky, because now Tricky was really been good, means he had really lost a lot of weight. Okay, so he calls, is compelled to call, is forced to call Pumphrey to collect Tricky back home. Okay, and as soon as Mr. Harriet calls Mrs. Pumphrey, okay, within minutes, what happens? You could see within minutes, just as soon as he calls his mistress, Mrs. Pumphrey, within minutes you see a limousine, a 10 feet long metal, that is a 10 feet long car, drew up outside the surgery, came and stopped outside the surgery. The chauffeur, he opened the door, and I could just make out the figure of Mrs. Pumphrey, almost lost in the interior. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of her. Her lips trembled. Oh, Mr. Harriet, do tell me the truth. Is he really better? Okay, so the car comes, the chauffeur opens the door, and Mr. Harriet could just see who? Mrs. Pumphrey. She has gone thin, worrying about who? Tricky. She tightly clasped her hand and asked Mr. Harriet tell me the truth, whether he has really gone better, he has really done better. So Mr. Harriet said, yes, he's fine. There is no need for you to get out of the car. I'll go and fetch him. He said, you don't come out, you can sit in the car. I'll just go and fetch him. So he walks through the house into the garden. A mass of dogs was hurtling round and round the lawn, and in their midst, ears flapping, tail waving, was a little golden figure of Tricky. In 2 weeks, he had been transformed into a lithe, hard-muscled animal. Lithe means a flexible, very agile, muscled animal. He was keeping up well, with the pack stretching out in great bounds, his chest almost brushing the ground. So he goes inside the house, okay, and the backyard, and sees all the dogs are playing over there, and among them is Tricky with his golden fur, waving his ears flapping and his tail wagging. Okay. In 2 weeks, within 15 days, he had been transformed into a very agile, very flexible animal with hard muscles, because now he was doing a lot of exercise. Okay. So he was exercising with the other pack. So now he was stretching out. So he was looking very, very fit and healthy. So Mr. Harriet carries him back along the passage to the front of the house. The chauffeur was still holding the car door open, and when Tricky saw his mistress, it took off from my arms in a tremendous leap and sailed into Mr. Pumphrey's lap. She gave a startled ooh, and then had to defend herself as he swarmed over her, licking her face and barking. So, as Mr. Harriet carries Tricky in his arms, he sees that the chauffeur still kept the door open of the car. And when Tricky sees Mrs. Pumphrey in the car, he just jumps out of the lap, from the arms of Mr. Harriet, and he ran towards who? Mrs. Pumphrey. He ran towards Mrs. Pumphrey and he jumped into her lap. Okay, and she gave a start to ooh, she shouted, and then she had to defend herself from Tricky. Defend herself why? Because he started swarming around her total body, he started licking her face. Okay, means he was showing a lot of love and barking at her. Means he was so happy. Tricky was very happy to see Mrs. Pumphrey. During the excitement, I helped the chauffeur to bring out the beds, toys, cushions, coats and balls, none of which had been used. So by the time they were being together, the excitement was going, and he was swarming and licking the face of Mrs. Pumphrey. By the time Mr. Harriet helps the chauffeur to collect all the belongings which had been bought when Tricky came. Nothing was been used, neither the cushions nor the coats, nor the toys, nothing had been used. All they bring it back and keep it in the car. Okay. And as the car moved away, and as the car went, Mrs. Pumphrey leaned out of the window. Means she leaned out of the window, car window, and there were tears in her eyes. Her lips trembled. She was very tears. Why? Because she was very happy. Oh, Mr. Harriet, she cried, how can I ever thank you? This is a triumph of surgery. She said, oh, Mr. Humphrey, how can I thank you? You have done a great job for me, and just because of this surgery, the triumph of surgery means this is the win, okay, of what? Surgery. Because of the surgery you did to this puppy or this Tricky, that now he has gone so agile, now he's so fit. She feels that Mr. Harriet has done a surgery on him and has removed her fat, but he has not done anything. What he has done is that he has given him a very strict diet, and he has seen that the dog is looked after like a dog. He has not been pampered. He has done all, if he does all the exercises and eat the strict diet, he is going to be fit and healthy. So she feels that the surgery has been made, but without any medication, without any surgery, the dog Tricky is fit and felt healthy and fine. Okay, that's all in this chapter. Okay, and before concluding, I would like to request you once again, those who are not yet subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to Galaxy Online Learning, and don't forget to press the bell icon, because once we upload any videos on this channel, immediately you get a notification and you know a new lecture has been uploaded. Okay, so you can watch it immediately. Okay, so don't forget to press the bell icon. Thank you.